and welcome to this very special episode of UNS Talks, a podcast by the international architecture and design firm UNStudio. As part of our ongoing campaign exploring the new perspectives UNStudio is bringing to architectural design, particularly in hospitality, we dive deeper into this evolving landscape with insights from our esteemed colleagues across the globe. From Amsterdam to Austin, Dubai to Hong Kong, and beyond, we explore the dynamic shifts in guest experiences and the future of hospitality. I sat down with my colleagues to uncover what clients are seeking in diverse markets such as Europe, the Middle East, and Australia, discover how UNStudio's innovative approach to design is shaping the future of hospitality, emphasizing authenticity, well-being, and the seamless integration of technology. Our conversation spans a range of topics, including the importance of creating emotional connections in design, the role of mixed-use buildings, and the significance of community interaction and sustainability. Tune in to gain a broader perspective on how the hospitality industry is transforming and what lies ahead. Welcome, everybody.
So the first question I have is, what are clients looking for in the hospitality sector, especially in Europe?
We have seen quite some changes in regards to the demands of hospitality since the global pandemic. And I've worked for a very long time in South Korea, and there it was the same, but also in Europe, the markets have shifted, because what we see in all those markets where we have done projects, it's that basically before it was about outstanding design for the urban inner city locations. But now, since the pandemic, hotel owners and operators embrace the more remote locations. And of course, they have done always because of the natural surrounding, but also traditional styles have always been very wanted. But actually, since the pandemic, the faking of historic styles is happening a bit less. So what our clients see or need is also good design wherever the project is. So basically authenticity sells best, and it's in a way it's not only design, no? It's from South Korea to the Middle East to the Mediterranean. We now see our clients looking for a sophisticated blend of landmark locations, often very difficult to access, but also a traditional sense of place, handcraft, with a future-proof design twist. And I think UNStudio can deliver that. Our first hotel that we designed in Switzerland, actually in the Swiss Engadin town of Zurich, is a great early example of that.
Essentially, I guess we can start with the first question, or maybe you can just give me insight into like what the German market is just looking for in general, and maybe how hospitality may or may not fit into that.
Yeah, so here in German, we are focused more on these multi-use buildings. We have owners as well as big corporates. So we have also this new kind of service for consultancy. So we stepped in very early to really understand the client and to develop together with them and strategy to bring them to the future, I would say. And this is very nice because I think this is a very important topic, especially for hospitality, because hospitality, for me, I'm an interior designer. It is about creating emotions, and you can create these emotions, I think, by understanding the client and what he wants to achieve, but also the users, and to lay this over each other and also creating some surprising ideas and to challenge the client. I think this is very good to, at the end, have this moment of feeling curious, welcomed, whatever it is, but this first step when you enter the place, and it could be a restaurant or a residential, whatever. you need to create this kind of feeling, and it has to also be not as superficial. It has to step deeper.
Yeah, that's super nice, especially when like you put all that research into it and you kind of need to find those connections. So yeah, I totally understand. And like when you're designing for mixed use, like oftentimes you're encouraging like community building, or let's say with 4, they're trying to expand the community outwardly and also bring people inside. And maybe could you explain like how hospitality plays a role in that, like engaging the community, or even just from a perspective of the office is super close to 4, and like what does that bring for you personally?
Yeah, the project 4 is a very nice example, because you have nearly everything in these 4 buildings. They are very close together, and they are located in we call it Quartier, Viertel, which was not that vibrant before, and now you realize that this brings this vibrant city quartier into that space, and you got it through, I think, through functions. You have this food court, for example, which you can enter. That's really nice. You have different kind of gastronomy concepts, and also fitness and all of this stuff. And I think the placement of it in the building network, I would say, brings this dynamic and bring the people in, because now there is nothing like that before in this place. And also the place in between the buildings, also a nice moment. There I heard there's already a bar. That is a nice one, a kind of pop-up bar. Maybe it's there for a longer time, but also some restaurants. And this is food is always a good attractor for people to come.
Yeah, looking at the project that we're working on, I think they're all very much focused on the integration with the community and the people that are in the city as a whole. It's about finding the right place for their hotel or for their offer to begin with is key, and then kind of making sure that whatever they have on offer is really a tailor-made solution. So there are no more cookie cutter type of setups. It's all this, okay, we want this, and it's going to be a one-off, and it's going to be super tailored to offer these experience and ultimate service offer that they're all looking for.
Yeah, and like is a service offered like based on different client wants and needs, or do you see like kind of trends that people are looking for and asking for in general?
I think in general, a big focus on health and well-being and physical and mental well-being. So it's really about getting away, and what we've been saying also for this home away from home, it's really about detaching from the things that you're working on in your daily life and transforming into a new bit of which is your leave, your focus on really your me time.
Yeah. What are clients looking for in the Middle East, like for hospitality as a typology?
Yeah, of course, in the Middle East, there's a very diverse range actually of hospitality and hotel offering. I think it ranges from very high end to the more family oriented hospitality. We see now in the market that especially the high end hospitality is driving the market and is attracting a lot of visitors from abroad. And so it's all about this unwinding, right? And we see that the time is a very much sought after commodity. And to find, let's say, this time for leisure is something which is the hospitality is focusing on. So offering of, relaxation, unwind, not being connected that much. So really have this wider offering than just a hotel room. It's all about the hospitality in terms of F&B, but also the spa and that type of offering. Of course, beach access. This is almost all hotels have a beachfront and beach access. So this is where they mostly target on and are looking for. And of course, on the other hand, it's also because there's such a blurring line boundary actually between work and leisure that the community hotels are very very popular, and we see more and more of that as well. So the 25 hours hotel, for example, is one of those examples where it's for long stay, for working. So there's always the kind of co-working spaces, or they have a big open space where they have places where people can meet and can work. So it's a bit of this overlap, because the Middle East is also very entrepreneurial. It has a very entrepreneurial business environment. And that's usually these very small companies, so they don't have an office yet. So this is really related to hospitality as well. And they are usually, centered or built in the center of the cities.
Yeah, I think that maybe even there, starting from that kind of conversation, like how you think of intertwining hospitality with other typologies would be really an interesting place to start from.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, I guess you can just jump in there, maybe even also what you've learned maybe from other hospitality projects, like say Wasl, and how you can maybe bring that into an American market is also a cool idea.
Yeah, I think our experience with Wasl, with Mandarin Oriental, is more or less that we know we're very valuable as UNStudio because of our collaborative nature. Let's say that we are very careful listeners and can translate it to providing the right framework in the architecture to create high ambition hospitality. And I think that creating that framework for high-end hospitality doesn't mean that we can create that high-end hospitality on the front. So I think, and that's a bit strange with our signature, let's say, UNStudio in real hardcore hospitality is good in organizing flows and providing the formula to go from to create sequence from one space to the other, and that can be front of house and of course also back of house.
I was thinking about, because Asia is so diverse and it's so dynamic and it's changing a lot. So the populations are also very distinct. And so I was thinking about, because we are doing a project, for example, in Korea, a resort in Korea. And so the issue is, of course, is that you're going to have to, in hospitality, you handle or you address three different parties. You have the developer, the client, you have the brand, the operator, and then you have also the guests or visitors, right? And it's looking at how to address each of their needs. And specifically, and so in Korea, they have a population that is very travel oriented. And so you have the domestic travel very much on weekends. The people in the cities love to travel, to do short-term travel around Korea. But then longer term, and that, Koreans really are very international travelers. And so when you're looking at hospitality design in Korea, it's really about one, finding the right identity for the hospitality in terms of the users you're kind of serving, but creating something that's very, very unique that would draw people, because it's very much driven by the image, by this kind of experience that you can also document, right? And it's also about what's been published out there, what's become a hot location, but also like the hot perspective that people want to be in, that kind of image based drawing. And so in Korea, and then you have kind of two groups, right? So besides the weekend versus the long-term travelers, right? You have the the cross-generational, because in Asia, that's very much also in Korea, you have larger groups that travel together 3 generations. And you need to kind of be able to provide the services and the amenities for that, and for, for middle range to very high end. And we're talking about, 5-star, like quote unquote 7-star, right? Which the trend of above and beyond. And doing that in a way that can serve, all the different needs of different generations, allow them to hang out together, and also to be kind of have their own schedule. But then you also, on the other side, you have the couples, the two, which they're seeing now a decrease in the amount of people who travel together. And so you do see couple or pairs traveling more. And so you have to accommodate that in different types of. And so in our resort, we have to accommodate the very large and the very small, and also a diversity of experience. So we have many, many different types of villa sizes and aesthetics and qualities and locations, whether it's in the mountains, on the beach, what are called garden villas. There's many kinds of people keep coming back. And then we have also condo size, and we also have hotel. So it to maximize really the type of experiences you can have. And so that's important. On the other side, then you have, like in Hong Kong, Hong Kong is very much this very cosmopolitan city. Everyone here is very transient in the sense that they're here in Hong Kong to then travel everywhere else, then come back, right? So you have that experience. And so then the hospitality here is very much oriented to those who want to shop here. So you have a lot of Asians who are here to shop because they still find benefit in shopping in Hong Kong, which has evolved in the last 20 years. But there are still certain Asian populations, like Indians right now, are the largest spenders actually now in Hong Kong. The hospitality then is all about service and luxury and extending that spending habit and that kind of high-end experience into the hospitality. On the other flip side, you have then the business, the business population, that you have conferences here, and so you want to create a hospitality experience that is a little bit less individualized, but actually more about the networking of the community experience. And it also creates a kind of certain aesthetic, or a kind of a business philosophy or approach to the hospitality. And then the last thing I was thinking was China, totally different end, where you have billions of people who all go holiday at the exact same times of the year. And they tend to all go to the same places domestically. So you have a very large population that can only afford to travel domestically. But then you also have the up and coming rich, and also, the very, the super wealthy that are traveling internationally and might stay in China if they find that it's convenient, because it has something that's absolutely amazing that they can find in China. So it's really about addressing with each of our different hospitality projects. It's about how to address the kind of local climate or traveling climate at the time, economic climate, and also the demands of the locale and kind of the identity of what the client and the operators are wanting. So, also in China, there's a lot of shift now, because previous generation, right, we would use something like TripAdvisor, right, where it was a visitor to find feedback, and people would kind of read that to know where to go. In China, what's very, very hot right now is Xiaohongshu, which is Little Red Book, which is outrageously popular. It tells everyone everything, like what to do, what to buy, where to go. And so they use that, and you have these photos of then, the experiences of the hotels and the different restaurants, etc. And that really drives people go. So you see where the power is. The consumer has the power, and the service, and and what the hospitality comes across is very much defined by the visitors and how they show it on social media. And so that's quite interesting, as opposed to how it's been, especially for a very specific generation, than for older generations, which might still rely on more traditional methods.
How do you incorporate these different technologies into how you think about the hotel or the hospitality, or like maybe even the client is a huge brand, but they want to upgrade their technology. How do you kind of find these seamless ways to integrate technology into your designs?
There are two ways where we apply technology. One is, of course, in the final product of hospitality, where technology enhances the guest experience, like from automated check-in to tailored preferences that people have, like smart rooms, and all of that is quite a standard. It's basically application of technology and not so much integrating it really into the design. It's sort of integrated by itself. But we, in the design process, I think we like to consider it in the journey of the customers in hotels, for example, because it's a lot of data that we get sometimes from our clients. We are also doing our own researches in user behavior, and we forecast different trends and tendencies. But how then, does it apply in the route and in the design itself? It's more like it's a chain of events that you design for your clients, where they can pick from and create like a inspiring day or week at the destination. So like to create that offer and make the link between the digital and sometimes the phones that have access, direct access, seamless access. But it's a discipline by itself, and the spatial design in a way is more or less really connected still to the human scale. But whereas we see that, for example, how AI tools influence how people work in the kitchen, how they work with the concierge, they influence the space requirements. So operation might change, and that allows, for example, to combine certain spaces, because where in the past there was either a leisure traveler or a business traveler, and hotels would cater to one or the other, it's now, especially since the pandemic, very much mixed. You have a blended group of travelers, and you have to provide that flexibility and serve to all types of users. And that's where our design software comes in, to understand not just one user or typical users, but really allow for a million of experiences in that hospitality environment.
Yeah. It kind of sounds super aligned with just how UNStudio approaches our projects in general, with a focus on well-being. How do you find like design solutions for designing for health and wellness in these sorts of ways?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. It's looking at the design from an experience point of view. So it's almost like a play. Like, imagine that all these travelers and people that are visiting a hotel or visiting a building, they're usually doing that for the first time. So we have to imagine that whatever we're doing is clear, it's optimized for the type of ideal experience, a user experience. When you go through the building, when you're there, everything is intuitive, and it's a sequence of interesting spaces and events that somebody walks through if they walk through a building. So it's about almost like creating different scenes of an arrival, a sitting down, and really looking at it from what does this traveler want, need, and all the things that you don't want them to have. You don't want them to have panic. You don't want them to have this, where am I? But to kind of subtly nudge them to it. I think there's a big focus on that experience and making the spatial decisions based on that.
Mm-hmm. And how do we approach like designing for these different sorts of hospitality? Because high end is totally different from, let's say, a co-working space. So kind of where do we start and kind of where do we end up?
So the differences in approaches to design. One of the things is, of course, the location of where we design those different hospitality offerings. If you have like the high-end hotels, which are usually on the beach, seafront, sea views. This also has a different condition. So it's all about this winding down and being distant from the hustle and the bustle of the city. So it's kind of this slowing down. So the approach to the hotel is something which is already a journey and an experience, to where you arrive at the hotel and in the hotel. So also this, just the arrival experience is on the high end, is more like slowing down. Well, for example, the arrival in a more city environment, more work and leisure hotels, there's really literally almost you arrive and you're there. So it's not so much the experience going there, it's more the accessibility of it and the ease of access. So the ease of entering the hotel, but also exiting the hotel, becoming part of the town. Well, for the high end, is more like you have to make an effort to get away from that hotel. But also on that principle is this exploration. So how do we design spaces where people can explore? So in the high-end hotels, it's kind of the different environments you create, where you have different areas, different pool areas, different spa areas with a very different environment and experience. Mm-hmm. So how do you create this kind of journey in the stay you are, or the time you stay in this hotel? Well, again, for the more work and leisure related, it's again this accessibility and the diverse offerings. That's still important in terms of food offerings, but also space offerings and environment and experience offerings. But it has a very different aspect to it. And of course, the aspect of real leisure, there's the big difference, right? That how we design the hotel rooms, where the guest rooms are in the really leisure focused hotel and the winding down. It's mostly about this relaxation. It's like the spaciousness and the different offerings and the color palette, the materials you use. So this is kind of contributing to the fact that you can wind down. You feel, let's say, really inside a cocoon almost. Well, the more work leisure hotels, it's of course also the luxury, but it's the perceived luxury. So it's being it means being connected to the rest of the world. So you're not really in this cocoon, but you have the access to everything. So the proximity of things, how we design and these hotels is very important.
Everything is about the experience. So and I think again also there we are quite strong because our service design could come in, or experience design could come in so handy over there if we get more knowledge of how that works in hospitality world. And for that, you should attract actually somebody from that world to create that kind of insight and disperse that through the office. And as such, we can expand better, I think, even in the hotel world, but it will take some time.
Going from there, how do you take these sorts of ideas into, let's say, like you were talking about hospitality in the workplace or hospitality in these other typologies, in a kind of very UNS centric way?
Yeah, I think as we do with UNStudio, because we're always kind of the pioneers. If we can find the projects that are not maybe the front of house hotel, but that are different. And I was just talking about, for instance, a lounge for an airliner in infrastructure. So also very much liaised to our hardcore quality. If we can, or in a mixed use environment, or in a higher ed environment, a campus environment where we can do interiors. And if we link those projects to how we would do a hotel, and actually, instead of taking hotel experience and putting it in there, but putting that experience in our hotel approach, then I think we might have something with which we can really distinguish ourselves. But we do have to collaborate for that. It's not an American thing. It's a global thing, I think.
Yeah, and it seems like there's, you have the client looking to make something, but then if you have such a high demand coming from the consumer, how do you as a designer kind of design for both of those? Or how do you navigate that kind of maybe conflict sometimes, or like cohesion at the same time?
Well, it's interesting because the clients are usually there, especially those who have operated hotels before. They kind of have a very good understanding of what type of market they're trying to serve. But for them, it's very much about numbers, right? That they need to be able to hit the number of keys and they're, be able to turn the profit. And so it's for them, I feel like what is the challenge that we have to serve is like, how can they make a very diverse experience for the things that bring in the most income? And sometimes, because the things that the difference is that they have to continue operating. There's trends. And so they have to deal with many of the different coming and going trends, as opposed to the visitors are just, they might come once and then that way they can take that photo and they're done. And so you want to gather your experience and understanding of the different types of visitors, but you want to be able to make it as diverse as possible so that the hotel can keep building on its own brand and has that flexibility. I think that something that's, and also it's, for them, they understand, right, taking advantage of what they have and where they are. In Asia, very specifically, like, for example, the biggest, most profitable and most valuable aspect is having a banquet hall that can be used for weddings. I mean, it's as simple as that. Like, weddings are the biggest thing in Asia, they're bringing the most money. And you have to design your hotel around almost the banquet hall, the location of it, the kind of the ability to access it without impacting the hotel, to allow it to be catered and served, and making it the most exciting place really draws as many people as possible. So that's why, you might have one or two guests coming in, but it's about them having this amazing banquet hall that they can make as flexible as possible, right? They can make to accommodate any different type of visitor, and then and still be, and make that, keep it occupied, increases the overall value and demand of the entire site. So I think that's kind of, juggling kind of the short term versus this long term trajectory of a hotel, Not to mention you have the brand coming in, and the brand has its own demands about how does this location or how does this specific hotel fit within their larger international identity and their international goals for the region or for certain pockets of travelers. It's things like that to juggle.
Yeah, for sure. I think what's one interesting thing about the campaign that we're doing is that we've really had to play with this idea of like what hospitality is, because, if you ask each person, they think it's something different. So I think that that's also important with the design. Like, one person might say hospitality is food and beverage or hotels or things like that. When, as a designer, do you guys have to have these sorts of conversations as well? And like, what do you talk about and how do you kind of think about what hospitality is?
Yeah, we speak a lot about this topic, especially for these bigger projects, also for the office buildings here. How can we make it to the place where people want to go and feel like home? What are the attractors? And it is food and beverage, of course, but it's also some other things, a community hub space where you can meet or whatever, and you can rent it. It can be everything. So we discuss a lot what are the best things to implement. So we developed kind of strategies also. For example, for this food, do we have a coffee, a bar, a restaurant just for the people who work there, but also for externals? Is there additional? So all of these questions are a part of it, and yeah, then you need to place them on the on the right level, and think a lot of how can we connect with the people inside the building, but also of course use what we have outside the building. Yeah, that you have these connections and build bridges.
Yeah, and like I know about the First Nations design, maybe laws or rules or guidelines. I guess I don't know the terminology, but how has it been trying to like get the First Nation perspective into your hospitality designs?
I think that the key thing, it's good that kind of that everybody is introduced to that topic of how to design together with different First Nations groups. Is first going through a stage of learning of that, which is about really this type of deep listening to who are the people that are and have been living in these lands for thousands and thousands of years, and what are their values. So that layer, like in the past 10 years, has become more important. Yeah. That instead of doing the architectural analysis, which is a very kind of desktop review of this is where this is how the sun goes, it's actually involving community members and asking them for the stories that are being told about the location. So that's not even about the actual physical manifestation of things, but in the past thousands of years, hundreds of years, what have the stories been about this place? So it's about listening to all these fantastic pieces of information and then responding to it. That then gives you the opportunity to respond to that in a literal, in a figurative way, or to provide another canvas to keep on storytelling. It's a very complex story. It's really difficult to. There's no one solution, and that's why a lot of people are struggling with that. But it's a fascinating, enriching element as well.
Yeah, for sure. And it's interesting because it seems like it's bridging, past, present, and then like we are trying to think about the future as well. So what do you think the future of hospitality industry in the market is right now?
I think that super tailored offer is something that is becoming more, it becomes easier to kind of to track people's wishes, or to kind of, people use lots of tools and systems to get user profiles identified of who visits. What do they want? How do they want to be welcomed? How do they want to spend their day? It becomes more and more interesting for operators to be able to respond really specifically to their clients. That you've got a group that wishes to see that recognition if they go into an hotel of feeling truly welcome and having a tailored experience to them.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then are there any challenges that you face, especially the Middle East?
There are several challenges, yes. And I've also said this before, I think it's like the perceived luxury. I think that's a very important aspect of how the transition went from like the gold, the marble kind of perceived luxury to the perceived luxury, which is more the commodity what time is. Can you walk in the hotel barefoot? Is everything like so smooth and so that there's no boundaries, there's no transition, right? It's kind of where you live in this cocoon and everything is connected. And that's now the new kind of luxury, right? Where it's not looking at the finishes itself, still very high quality finishes and very high quality spaces, but it's very different approach to things. It's this perceived luxury, and I think that the market is still undecided on this, right? You see still like the real, like the luxury based on gold and marble, and with the typical clients, and we have also the newer, let's say, clients who focus more on these experiences, and that's then the luxury. So that's a big challenge. I think another challenge is the speed of things. Of course, we know that the Middle East has a drive to develop and to grow and to really offer new things and new experiences. But that means also that the time for design is very short usually, which means, of course, that the intensity of those projects sometimes don't allow for time to really develop into something which we stand behind, in the sense that it's really developed to its best way. So this is definitely a challenge where we see that happening. And then another challenge is where disconnect with authorities sometimes and with the developers. So we focus only, let's say, on a very small, the plot itself or the project itself, and not in the wider community kind of realm where it's connected to the city more. So we create these little islands in the city which are disconnected. And we would rather see that we create a city which is connected in the way between the plots as well, and between the different developments. And that's more related to regulations, authorities, and the flexibility of participation of the neighborhood, which is not existent here. So these kind of challenges we see happening, and of course logistics, supply chains. That's still the Middle East. We don't produce much here. What is produced elsewhere. So that there's also the challenges on the materials and the quality of the materials we can have and use here.
Yeah, I think that also gets to like two ideas of sustainability, like the social sustainability, kind of how do you encourage maybe within the parameters that you have, like the conversation between the community and the building itself. And then also, like, is there any focus on, environmental sustainability in the Middle East, or is it just that you need to grow the market and you can't think about sustainability yet in that regard?
That is shifting more and more. That is also because there is more and more investment from different directions. Also, that Dubai and UAE have of course the visions for the next 10, 20 years, which are more focused on the livability of the cities. And this relates also to sustainability, both social and environmental, where they have indeed bigger plans of how we can, and I call it almost a maturing of the city, because for example, Dubai has been developed at such a high pace, that some things have been developed on the go without, a lot of time to think about what I just said as well, this holistic thinking, and how can we connect different developments together? How can we make actually a city? Because a city is for people and not so much for buildings.
Yeah.
And this is the next layer, which goes on top of the city, which makes it super interesting to have these experiences and have these new kind of projects developing in the Middle East, because this layer is now added to the thinking. what is quite interesting to especially Dubai and Abu Dhabi is that hotels are very much used for the social gathering of the people who live here. So it's not that only hotel visitors and hotel guests use the hotels, but they are very much used as the meeting place for even birthday parties and just going out and having a drink and having dinners. So it's very much a part of the city. So, and I think this layer we can expand a little bit further on, that it's even more accessible, and that is in terms of working in the lobbies, right? It's accessible for everyone just to work there a couple of hours per day without being charged for it, but just being there and enjoying that environment. So this layer of the social aspect of an hotel is also something which develops more and more, and it was always already present for the going out and entertainment, let's say.
Yeah, that reminds me of in our conversation about Wassel, you talked about the ballroom and having to, create space for a huge ballroom, but having to use a parking lot. So I think that to me is a nice connection of the design thinking.
Yeah, exactly. This is a very, very good example, actually, indeed, where usually the ballroom is either set aside from the lobby, or it's just not the nicest box, let's say, of the hotel. And we celebrated actually that the ballroom is almost a public space, right? It's open for everyone to use as for celebration, for weddings, and to connect it into, not in the tower itself, but in the parking building, of course, creates this communication almost between the different parts of the city, but also parts of the development. And it's a very interesting thing to see that the parking is not just only parking, but it becomes this way more than that.
Yeah, and in so many ways, we're also focusing on sustainability. And then we're going into these kind of like landmark places or natural or places with a lot of nature. And so I can imagine that presents like a lot of different challenges. Can you like kind of talk through how you kind of balance those challenges with design?
Yeah, the thing is, the trend is happening. We as architects can't hold that back. So if we are asked to work on this type of projects, the only thing we can do is add our knowledge on sustainability and how to approach these sites in the best possible way. Because we also know that, for example, in a questionnaire by the World Tourism Organization, like in 2023, 73% of all global travelers, they want to stay in hotels that have implemented sustainable practices. And as architects, we have to make sure that happens from the onset, like basically how to access, how to construct there. Like in situ construction is not a good thing, looking at modularity, but how to transport construction material there. So it's not possible to not have an impact, but you can really consider also waste management, water conservation, all those things in a holistic, sustainable package to have as little bad impact as possible.
Yeah. And do you think that, like, I know that right now the Austin office isn't looking at this typology, but do you think that there would be a difference between, say, designing a hotel in the US versus the Middle East, or what are people looking for?
Yeah.
Do you think you kind of have your finger on that pulse, or is that something to come?
No. I do think about it, because we had the connect to Mandarin Oriental just a while ago, and we know we heard that they want to expand in America. So I dropped a mail and I made sure that Ivan was in, so he sees it also centrally, that we're interested on helping them with that. And what I heard from Mandarin is that they were hesitating in the US because of the different value let's say, formula that American hotels have. American hotels are all about accessibility, low threshold. So it's more about the mass than about the exclusivity. And that exclusivity for them is key. So finding a business model in the US whereby you actually make sure that people really would like to come, not only the really rich people, but also the people that feel that there is interest in being part of that for once a year or once every 3 years. I think that's something that they have to figure out.
And you said that inclusivity is important. Like, what do you mean by, let's say, an inclusive hotel in the US somewhere?
I think it's a contradiction in terminal, because America is a mixed population. I mean, people come from everywhere, but still they're all Americans usually. And I think if you don't provide the right access for foreigners, people coming from outside, you miss on the business model. You cannot, as a Mandarin Oriental or Four Seasons, make a hotel only for Americans. It has to be something for Asians, Latin people, and Europeans. And that's the challenge, I think, for all of these chains, to provide that backdrop not only for Americans but also for the people that come from outside.
Yeah, I think there's a lot more internal travel in the US, and that's like a huge challenge too.
Yeah. Well, that's the big potential, of course. That's why all these big chains are over here. I mean, most of the Hyatts and the Marriotts, threshold is so low, and people are willing to pay for it, and they want to go because that's their holidays, their little holidays, the weekend of Labor Day, the weekend of, I don't know, Thanksgiving, etc. They don't go on the big holidays, they go on small holidays, here, there. And then the threshold should be low enough, because then they don't have to pay their ass off, of course. And prices are high already, I mean, here.
Yeah. And you see, I think maybe on a larger scale, because the US is a really interesting kind of niche in terms of designing hotels. A big niche, and what the future of hospitality industry could be.
Oh, I think, to be honest, what you said, the potential is so high because domestic traveling is so intense that if you could find a client or a chain or a brand or brands that are trying to make a difference and provide another exclusivity, let's say, but to be part of that team and to do that pre-service and strategize with them what could be the brief, that would be fantastic. Yeah, to develop that business model with them over here. Yeah.
That'd be super cool.
The last question would be like, what do you see the future of the hospitality industry being in China or the entire market of Asia?
The future of hospitality, I would say that, I think it mimics how a lot of other typologies are evolving, in the sense that shopping malls used to be just about shopping, hotels used to be about staying, right? It's not like that anymore. People are looking for their lives are becoming so integrated that you have a hotel that they might be there for working part of the time, then enjoying themselves part of the time. And so you have to mix all these together. And I think so the future of hospitality, I think, is also going to be this mishmash, where you're going to need to serve not only those going there for business or those for recreation, but those who are trying to do three or four things in one go. You also want to create, and that's on one side, right? That's a very functional approach. On the other side, you have there's obviously going to be this eco trend, right? And this new ways in which to relax. I feel like there's going to be blackout, or where they block all wireless access definitely in a lot of remote resorts, because I've been to places. I've been to Fiji where I thought I wouldn't get any access, and then they had the best wireless access in the middle of an island somewhere, so that was just shocking.
Yeah.
But no, I think that we see the trend of that it's not just about having an eco resort or a luxury kind of spa resort. It's about merging it all together, where you have this super green, sustainable hotel that is very, very high in luxury, but provides then those services but also in a ecological way, and they wrap it all together in this very complex branding. And it can't just be pigeonholed as it's not just a spa. It's not just a place to escape. It's not just a place that you go with your family. It's something that you can do it all, which is quite unique. And I think that that's happening also. I think because developers are seeing how programs can come together, and it's almost like a crossover of brands. They're mixing two things that you would never imagine that mix together. And I think that travelers are also looking for things that are so different that it works, so that you end up going to places that you never expect to stay, and then you can experience things that are so different that it brings different typologies that you never expect to mix together to come together, which then creates a new brand. So I think that's where I see this evolution coming, that you just it comes with the territory and the ambitions of travelers. So yeah, it's
super nice.
Everything.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, what do you see as the future of hospitality as well? Like, what do you see as the next thing that will change the sector?
Yeah, no, like staying to Europe and the Mediterranean, we have really seen the last years an upswing, and that's a very different upswing than 20-30 years ago, where it was catering to either the leisure or the work travelers. Now that blending of travel purposes has demands a more diversified offer, and it's in a way a differentiation of room types, but also of service level, that you can stay for 4-star or 5-star, but also a combination of spaces that sometimes make a guest feel at home, but also sometimes somewhere new or abroad at the same time, that you can swap yourself between that experience. And one easy thing are, like, for example, multifunctional spaces in hotels, and that you can adapt to cater to different needs. But in a bigger scale, what we see is also that blending the boundary between what is a hospitality space and what's operated by a brand with the next brand, and with the urban and the green environments and the public spaces that are linked. So it becomes less that it's a building with certain hospitality offer. It becomes more sort of neighborhood, a little district where different types of services blend, like in a city. So we see the trend very much with some of our clients where we are working on in the Mediterranean, that they have, within the development that we are designing, there are 4 brands, for example, and each needs to tell their unique story. Each caters to a specific type of client, but together they form a neighborhood. They create a new village on a more more social engaging environment that's really linking to the context of that city. And in the future we see more of that, because it's really that this, you can call it cross-fertilization of guests that hop from one place to the other. That's not only good for the business plan, but it also caters to the identity of the place, and it can change, for example, the tourist environment, what maybe now has been a place for mostly students to go and very much about liquor and drinking and party nights, can change by repositioning things to cater to other type of users. And in a way, you could say it's curating that experience. So the design is about buildings, interiors, the product for it, but in a way it's creating a curated experience.
Yeah, because I was going to say that it seems like almost it's cross competition in a way, and that's a hard thing to navigate. Like, who do you give more, I don't know, like good space to if in that like a battle of brands? But it makes sense that it's more for the different clientele instead.
And in a way, it's also more sustainable, because if you have an area, an island somewhere that already has an airport and people are traveling there, you would want to make the best out of the space that you have, like to provide quality space where for a long time it's a sensible tourism, creates a better environment, because economically it drives the inhabitants. There's work generated from it. There's an industry setting up. It just needs to be in the right balance and not being overdone, like sometimes 30 years back when we think about some of the Mediterranean coasts, it was too much. But if the balance is right, I think you can, people that live there can benefit from it, and people that visit do benefit from the natural resources as well.